Hello, welcome to the next edition of the Roundtable, Season 7, Episode 4. Today our topic is about residential housing for first home buyers in Melbourne. We have exclusive interviews with Tom Boxtel, the economist, James Emery, the town planner, Callum McLeod, the property developer, and we also have an exclusive phone interview with a community representative. Welcome back to the Roundtable. May as well get straight into it. Tom, as the economist, what are your thoughts on first home buyers in residential housing for Melbourne?
Well, in Melbourne, residential property prices have gone through the roof over the past 3 decades, particularly in our major cities. Prices are so expensive it is making it almost impossible for everyday Australian citizens to acquire their first home. There are many economic reasons as to why property prices are at record highs. A major factor which influences property prices in Australia is interest rates, and these are at historical lows. Interest rates have a massive influence on property prices, as interest rates have decreased over the years from 1990, where they were as high as 17%, to currently a record low of 1.75%. You're probably wondering how these low rates affect house pricing affordability to first home buyers in the Melbourne area. As the rates decrease, this reduces potential mortgage repayments for individual households. As the repayment on the loan is less, this enables consumers to loan out more than they previously could have, allowing them to allocate a higher amount of funds towards a mortgage to purchase their first property. For example, assuming rates are at the same cash rate, a loan of $500,000 in 1990 at a cash rate of 17% had payments of $85,000 per year. Whereas today, if a cash rate at 1.75% of the same amount of $500,000, the repayment's only $8,700. That's a huge difference of $77,000. As people in today's society can afford to service a greater loan than we ever previously could, we can allocate a higher amount to property. As more people are now in the market to buy property, this has had an effect, shifting demand to the right, increasing market equilibrium prices. This has had a huge increase on prices, making it that little bit more difficult for first home buyers to get their foot in the door and purchase their first home.
Thanks for that, Tom.
No worries.
Now we'll head over to our community rep, who we spoke to earlier today, and what they have to say about the topic.
So from the community's perspective, what's your opinion on the government's plan to tackle housing affordability and choice?
Well, I think it's good that the government has come together with a solid plan for Melbourne. It is hard for all of us in this current housing market. They have finally worked out that growth of house prices has exceeded the growth of income, and it doesn't add up. I guess it could be a foreign investment issue, but I don't know exactly how much of an influence that has. But what I do know is that developers have too much control over the market. It makes sense that they have put priority on developments of higher density living. It helps address, in my opinion, the biggest problem Melbourne has, and that is transportation. Higher density living closer to public transport reduces the cost of living and buys time for people's lives. This can therefore justify a slightly higher price tag. However, some of the developments I don't think have been done very well. Too many of the appearances from the outside look like a prison cell. Just boring concrete buildings built by developers who know what the government wants, but will do what also makes them money. More needs to be done to attract people to this high density living, because at the moment I personally haven't been convinced to go and live in any of these complexes. Prices are still too high for apartments. Developers are holding ownership to make money through rental income of these apartments. There are not enough apartments up for sale, is what I'm trying to say. If there was, they would be more reasonably priced, in my opinion. Also, these higher density developments are taking place with some old wonderful buildings. I know heritage listing can be the answer, but we still see local pubs like the Balmoral Hotel and Edgy Mentone being bought with the plans for demolish and building of apartments. More should be done to promote the keeping of these historic and community enriching businesses.
Welcome back to the Roundtable. You just heard from our community rep. Now we'll hear from the property developer, Cal.
Indeed, housing is becoming increasingly difficult for first home buyers. And partly it is to do with developers posing as big competitors in the market. At the moment we are taking advantage of the low interest rates that Tom has talked about, and as developers we generally have access to a larger amount of capital that we then reinvest. I understand why the community rep does not like this fact, and why we come under constant criticism for certain developments. However, it must be said developers are always in contact with the local council and are consulting planners such as James. We are not just in this for the money. Our developments help pump money into local areas. More apartment living means a larger market for local businesses such as cafes and restaurants. As long as our developments are well planned to suit the local community, I see no issue in purchasing blocks of land, including knocking down and developing completely new sites. Melbourne cannot continue its dream for a detached house on a quarter-acre block. It's unrealistic. As our population grows, the demand for housing close to the city consequentially goes up. To feed the demand, larger plots of land closer to the city must be turned into apartments. It's a necessary investment. And obviously first home buyers are not going to construct multiple apartments or units that are required. The fact that our community representative is not happy with the end product is a concern. And that concern is hard to address. Maintaining quality should be a priority for developers. If quality is lacking, they risk not interesting buyers or tenants. I would recommend anyone looking to purchase or rent apartment properties to research the physical property just as you would a house. Such things as inspections and thorough research into the construction are must-dos before purchase. First home buyers' mentality needs to change. They cannot expect the same bang for your buck as the baby boomer generation had before us. They can't assume quality. If the community becomes more educated in property and what to look for, bad developers will no longer get away with bad construction. And now we'll hear from James to hear what he has to say from a planner's perspective.
Thanks, Cal. Going through Plan Melbourne, I've seen some initiatives that have really gone a long way in helping us plan for the future of Melbourne. First point is delivering housing close to jobs and transport, which comes out of Initiative 2.2.3. Providing housing close to jobs promotes affordable living. There are already areas in metropolitan Melbourne with medium to high job numbers that have the potential to provide more housing. In order to plan for this growth, national employment clusters, metropolitan activity centres and activity centres will require structured plans to enable housing and job growth. All structured and housing strategies will need to demonstrate how they will deliver a greater diversity of housing, attract more jobs and help deliver the 20-minute neighbourhood. Other areas for consideration may include areas with well-established suburbs, which the housing stock's in reaching the end of its life and are ready for redevelopment as medium density housing, and areas around railway stations, public transport, interchanges and some public transport corridors. In the short term, this will we will work towards providing the majority of new housing in established suburbs within walking distance to the train, tram and smart bus routes. The first initiative really surrounds the idea of turning housing into medium and high densities around the jobs and transport. By creating a demand for housing near transport and jobs, we will see a change in zoning and planning policies. That is, we will see new developments pop up around these areas. This will see new housing pop up from where first home buyers can save on stamp duty of purchasing off the plan. In all these changing zones to allow higher density housing, we'll create a larger supply of housing in the market and slightly more affordable living in the key areas for first home buyers of Melbourne. Now talking about the second point from Plan Melbourne, which is accelerate investments in affordable housing, which comes under Initiative 2.4.3. Given the growing numbers of people unable to afford the cost of rental accommodation, especially in the more accessible central and inner urban areas of metropolitan Melbourne, it will become increasingly important to engage with institutions and private sector providers to involve these to become a lower cost housing to provide. In the short term, we will investigate planning and mechanisms to deliver more affordable housing, especially within significant change areas. In the medium term, identify government actions that could help viable private sector real estate investment trusts that provide long-term housing options to lower income households. The really key point from this initiative is that if there is an acceleration in the investment of affordable housing and provide incentives for private sector investors to invest in affordable housing for low income earners. That will see a dive in rental prices, meaning first home buyers will have a greater disposable income and can afford to borrow more from the banks, and also save more money on the rental prices that have decreased. This would be a real bonus, but the effect of this initiative wouldn't be realised in the short or medium terms. This initiative would be realised in the long term, as they would have to have a massive save up from the first home buyers from the decrease in the rental market.
Thanks for that, James.
No worries, Tom. Thanks everyone for tuning into the round table. Please tune in next week to find out what we have in store for you. And I hope you guys can get into your first home. And that's a wrap, boys.